Angela Freeman stepped through the grand double doors of Meridian Financial's flagship branch. The high ceiling stretched above her, sunlight bouncing off polished marble floors. The place reeked of exclusivity, gold-trimmed counters, private consultation booths, and a quiet hum of efficiency. The kind of bank where wealth meant service, and privilege meant never waiting in line. She moved with quiet confidence, her navy blazer crisp, her heels tapping softly against the pristine floor. She had been here before, many times in fact, but never like this. Angela approached the main counter, sliding her withdrawal slip and ID toward the teller with the ease of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Beth, the young teller at the counter, barely glanced at her before her smile dimmed. Her eyes flicked to the paper in front of her, scanning the amount. $115,000. Beth's fingers twitched. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough for doubt to creep onto her face. Then, instead of processing the request, she turned slightly, angling her body toward the adjacent station. "Mark," she murmured, her voice low but not low enough. "Can you take a look at this?" Angela caught the way Mark's eyes narrowed before he even saw the numbers. His gaze landed on her first, studied her, judged her. Beth pushed the ID toward him. He picked it up, turned it over between his fingers, then looked at Angela again. "You sure you're in the right place?" he asked, his tone casual but carrying something else beneath it. Angela remained composed, hands steady at her sides. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Mark smirked. "It's a lot of cash, and it's my money." Beth shifted uncomfortably, but before she could say anything, the air around them shifted. A presence moved in, a shadow of authority cutting through the space. Jessica Keller, the branch manager, a woman who had spent 15 years perfecting the art of quiet exclusion. She approached with the kind of confidence that only came from knowing the rules always worked in her favor. Her eyes barely acknowledged Angela before dropping to the withdrawal slip. The smirk arrived almost immediately. "We can't just hand out cash to anyone who walks in," Jessica said, voice carrying just enough to be overheard. Beth stiffened. Mark didn't bother hiding his amusement. Angela tilted her head slightly. "Anyone?" Jessica folded her arms, tapping a manicured nail against her elbow. "That's a substantial amount. We have protocols for this sort of thing." Angela nodded toward her own ID, still sitting between them. "You have my identification, my account history, my signature." Jessica exhaled sharply, picking up the ID between two fingers as if it carried weight beyond its plastic. "And yet," she mused, dragging the pause long enough for the message to sink in, "we still need to verify. You understand?" The smirk deepened. Behind the counter, another teller leaned toward her colleague, voice barely a whisper but carrying just enough. "She doesn't even look like she has that kind of money." A quiet ripple of laughter spread, low, restrained, but unmistakable. Angela didn't flinch. Jessica set the ID down, sliding it back across the counter. "People like you don't belong in this branch." Silence settled over the moment, thick and suffocating. For the first time, the other customers in the lobby seemed to take notice. Some shifted uncomfortably, others pretended not to hear. A few watched, eyes filled with thinly veiled curiosity. Angela didn't move, didn't react. She simply let the words hang in the air. Let them expose exactly what this was. Angela stood still, her ID untouched on the counter, Jessica's words lingering like a stain in the air. She had faced this kind of treatment before, subtle, polite on the surface, but poisoned underneath. But here, in a place where she had spent years building her career, the irony was sharper than ever. Her eyes flicked across the lobby, observing. At the entrance, a middle-aged white businessman in an expensive tailored suit strode in, barely making it past the welcome desk before a teller rushed to greet him. "Good morning, Mr. Langford," the teller beamed. "Right this way, sir." The man barely acknowledged them with a nod before being ushered toward a private glass-walled room where plush leather chairs and personal banking representatives awaited him. No waiting, no questioning. Angela's fingers curled at her sides. A few feet away, near the regular teller counters. A black janitor in a faded blue work uniform stood patiently, check in hand. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, with tired eyes and a worn-out posture. The teller assisting him was frowning. "I need another form of ID," she said, barely concealing her suspicion. The man shifted uncomfortably. "I got my work ID, my driver's license right there. And proof of employment?" The janitor blinked. "Ma'am, it's a check from my job. It has the company's name on it. Ain't that proof enough?" The teller sighed, shaking her head. "I need a supervisor's approval. Hold on." Angela watched the scene unfold, her chest tightening. She had seen enough. She turned back to Jessica, who was still standing behind the counter, arms folded like a queen surveying her kingdom. "I'd like to speak with someone above you," Angela said, voice steady. Jessica smirked. "You're speaking to the highest authority in this branch." Angela met her gaze head-on. "Then I'll take this to corporate." Jessica let out a small laugh, amused by the challenge. "Oh, and tell them what? That we follow security procedures?" Angela exhaled slowly. She had seen this tactic before, gaslighting, dressing up discrimination as a policy. "You don't have security concerns," Angela said. "You have bias." Jessica's smirk didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe. "If you can't prove how you got this money, we simply can't process this transaction," she said smoothly. Angela leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "My money, my account. You don't get to decide if I deserve it." Jessica cocked her head, the fake concern dripping from her tone like venom. "Maybe you should try one of those check cashing places down the street," she said, voice sickly sweet. "They're more suited for your kind." The words struck like a slap. Not just for Angela, but for the black janitor, still waiting. For every customer of color who had ever stood in this very lobby and felt like they were being told the same thing in different words. Angela let the silence stretch. She didn't flinch, didn't react. Instead, she slowly reached into her bag. Jessica's smirk deepened, as if expecting a desperate plea, some final attempt to prove her worth. Instead, Angela pulled out her phone and dialed. Jason Statham sat in the VIP section, a place reserved for high-profile clients, the ones banks treated like royalty. The polished mahogany table in front of him held a steaming cup of black coffee, untouched. His fingers tapped against the rim of the cup, slow and rhythmic, the only sign of his growing irritation. From where he sat, he had a perfect view of the counter where Angela Freeman stood, her posture straight, her face unreadable. He had seen that expression before, the kind of restraint people wore when they were being disrespected but refused to let it show. His sharp eyes moved between Angela and Jessica Keller, the branch manager who practically dripped with condescension. Jason had encountered people like her before, entitled, smug, the type who believed power came from a job title rather than integrity. But what irritated him the most was the laughter. It wasn't loud, not the kind of laughter that filled a room, but it was there. The quiet chuckles, the knowing glances exchanged between the staff, the smirks that said more than words ever could. "Probably a scammer or money launderer," one of the bankers, Richard, muttered to his colleague. Jason's jaw tightened. Angela heard it too. She didn't react, but Jason saw the subtle shift in her breathing, the tightening of her fingers at her sides. Jessica leaned over the counter, smiling in a way that wasn't friendly. "You should try one of those check cashing places down the street. They're more suited for your kind." Silence stretched in the lobby, thick with tension. Jason lifted his cup, took a slow sip of his coffee, eyes still locked on the unfolding humiliation. He had seen enough. The cup clicked softly against the saucer as he placed it down. And then he stood up. Angela didn't break eye contact with Jessica as she reached into her purse. Her movements were slow, deliberate, so controlled that it made Jessica's smirk widen. She clearly expected a scene, maybe shouting, maybe begging, anything that would justify the way she was treating her. Instead, Angela pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Oh, Jessica folded her arms, her smirk turning into an outright grin. She turned slightly toward her staff, making sure they were all watching. Oh, she's calling her little friends now, Jessica said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Maybe they can Venmo her the cash. Laughter rippled through the staff. Angela ignored it. She pressed the call button and lifted the phone to her ear. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. Calmer than it should have been, considering the situation. But there was something else beneath the surface, a quiet authority that turned the smirks into uncertainty. Diane, Angela said smoothly, I need you at the downtown branch. Now, the smirk on Jessica's face twitched. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her features. Diane? Jessica's mind raced, trying to place the name. The only Diane she knew of was her breath hitched. Diane Porter, the woman who had the power to decide the fate of every branch manager in the company, including Jessica Keller. Jessica's posture stiffened, her amusement fading. Beth, the young teller who had first assisted Angela, swallowed hard, her eyes darting between Jessica and the woman on the phone. Richard and Mark, who had been smirking just moments ago, exchanged uneasy glances. Even Jason Statham, now standing near the VIP section, tilted his head slightly, interested in what was about to unfold. Angela lowered her phone, not even bothering to say goodbye. The call was already done. Now it was only a matter of waiting. Jason Statham had been patient. He had watched, listened, let the scene unfold to see just how far these people were willing to take it. But now he was done waiting. He pushed his chair back slowly, the wooden legs scraping softly against the marble floor. The movement was subtle, but in the dead silence that followed Angela's phone call, it felt deafening. He straightened his jacket, took a slow breath, and walked toward the counter. Jessica, who was still processing the weight of Angela's phone call, caught the movement in her peripheral vision. Her expression changed instantly. The arrogant smirk returned, but now it was polished into something friendlier. Mr. Statham, Jessica beamed, completely ignoring Angela now. What a surprise. How can we help you? The shift was instant, the fake warmth in her voice, the sudden eagerness to please. It was sickening. Jason didn't return the smile. His face was blank, but his eyes were cold, unreadable. You can start, Jason said, voice smooth but sharp enough to cut through the entire lobby. By giving this lady her damn money. Jessica froze. Her smile flickered. The staff members, who had been whispering just moments ago, stiffened. Beth's fingers twitched over the keyboard, as if unsure whether she should keep pretending to work or look away from the disaster unfolding in front of her. Mark took a step back, glancing nervously at Richard, who suddenly seemed very interested in the papers on his desk. For the first time since this had started, it was Jessica who looked caught off guard. Mr. Statham, she said carefully, her voice softer now. This is just a misunderstanding. We have security procedures. Jason didn't let her finish. He turned, raising his voice slightly, speaking not to her, but to the entire lobby. Y'all see this? Jason said, gesturing toward Angela. This is what they do. This is how they treat black customers. A murmur spread through the bank. People who had been trying to mind their own business suddenly looked up, eyes darting toward Angela, then back to Jason. Someone near the back pulled out their phone, then another. Within seconds, multiple cameras were recording. Jessica's face paled. Her eyes darted around the room, realizing just how many people were watching. Jason stepped closer to the counter, placing both hands on the polished surface. You got no problem handing out cash to every suit that walks through that door, Jason continued, voice steady but filled with quiet rage. But when a black woman who built more wealth than half the people in this damn city comes in to take out her own money, suddenly there's a problem? Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing to say. The scene had shifted. She was no longer in control. The air inside the bank felt heavy, charged with a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. The quiet murmurs of the customers, the hushed whispers of staff. and the low hum of camera phones recording. It all came to a halt the moment the glass doors of the bank burst open. A gust of cool air swept through the lobby as Diane Porter stepped in, flanked by two board members and a pair of security officers. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with sharp precision, each step echoing through the stunned silence. She didn't need to announce her presence. The sheer authority radiating from her was enough. Jessica's head snapped toward the entrance. The second her gaze landed on Diane, her face drained of color. Panic flickered in her eyes. She straightened her blazer, desperately trying to regain control of a situation that had already slipped it through her fingers. The customers, employees, everyone in the lobby watched in anticipation. Diane stopped in front of the counter, her cold gaze locked onto Jessica. Her expression was unreadable, but her sharp, deadly tone carried the weight of a hammer about to drop. "Jessica Keller, step into my office. Now!" Jessica flinched. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her confidence, her arrogance, all of it vanished in an instant. The employees who had laughed moments ago suddenly looked anywhere but at Diane. Beth shifted nervously, gripping the edge of the counter. Mark swallowed hard. Richard's hands trembled as he adjusted his tie, eyes darting toward the exit. Diane didn't wait for Jessica to respond. With an air of absolute control, she pulled out her tablet and tapped the screen. The bank's security footage appeared. On the crystal-clear display, the past 30 minutes of interactions unfolded. Every smirk, every eye roll, every sneer, and, most importantly, every racist remark that had been spoken. The lobby was dead silent as the video played. Jessica's voice filled the space like a ghost haunting its own crime scene. "People like you don't belong in this branch. Maybe you should try one of those. Check cashing places down the street. Oh, she's calling her little friends now. Maybe they can Venmo her the cash." Each sentence was a nail in the coffin, playing out in high-definition humiliation for all to witness. Jessica staggered backward, her breath shallow. She could feel the heat of every pair of eyes in the room, burning into her. Customers whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others continued recording, capturing a moment that would soon explode all over social media. Diane turned her gaze back to Jessica, her voice as cold as ice. "You're fired, effective immediately." The words fell like a death sentence. Jessica stood frozen, her breathing uneven, as the weight of Diane Porter's words crushed every ounce of power she once had. "You're fired, effective immediately." The finality of it rang through the lobby like a gunshot. For the first time since this started, Jessica looked small. The polished, untouchable branch manager, who had been so confident, so smug, was now nothing more than a disgraced employee about to be thrown out of her own bank. Behind her, Richard and Mark stiffened, their own panic creeping in as they realized this wasn't just about Jessica. They had laughed, they had mocked, they had been part of this. And Diane Porter wasn't done. She turned slightly, locking eyes with them. "Richard, Mark, pack your things. You're done here." Richard let out a strangled sound, like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. Mark simply stood there, mouth slightly open, as if his brain hadn't fully caught up to the fact that his career was over. Diane signaled to security. The guard stepped forward. Jessica jerked back instinctively, but there was nowhere to run. "Wait, she started, voice cracking, but security grabbed her firmly by the arm. Her heels scraped against the marble as they dragged her away, past the stunned tellers, past the customers still recording, past Angela, the woman she had tried to humiliate, now watching her downfall with unwavering composure. Richard and Mark followed next, escorted like criminals, their heads down, their faces pale. They had walked into work thinking they owned the place. Now they were being thrown out like trash. The glass doors swung shut behind them. And just like that, the storm had passed. But the damage was done. The bank, once a carefully maintained illusion of prestige, now felt like a crime scene, the scene of a public execution where racism had been exposed in front of everyone. Angela exhaled slowly, then turned back to Diane. "This isn't over," she said, her voice firm. "We need real change." Diane met her gaze, understanding exactly what she meant. A policy change wouldn't be enough. A few firings wouldn't be enough. This moment had to mean something. Before Diane could respond, Jason Statham let out a low chuckle. He turned, walking toward the exit with Angela, his smirk lingering just long enough for everyone to see it. "Damn right," he muttered. The glass doors slid open. Angela and Jason walked out. And inside the bank, nothing would ever be the same again.